Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival and our 2025 Nemo Talks series. I'm Suzanne Sanger, the Executive Director of the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association. And I'm joining you today from Chiquelp, also known as Gibsons, in at Catsum Howe Sound, on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. The SCCA, together with our program partner Rhizome Media, is thrilled to bring you our 6th annual Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival. This year's events have been made possible through generous support of the District of Seashelt, the BC government and Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition, as well as many local businesses and individual donors. We are so very grateful to all of our supporters whose contributions enable us to offer festival events free of charge to everyone who wants to participate. The SCCA is a charitable nonprofit society with a mission to protect and restore biodiversity on the Sunshine Coast. We work across a region that is more than 2 million hectares of lands and waters, from Howe Sound to Hamathko, in the territories of the Squamish, Shishak, Tla'amin, Klahoose, and Homolko First Nations. We are deeply committed to reconciliation and honor the rights and titles of all nations in their territories. And we offer deep respect for their enduring stewardship of the place that we all share and call home. We draw deep inspiration from the profound connection, reverence, and care that Indigenous cultures have always had for the lands and waters and the species of these territories. The SCCA began hosting Oceans Day events in 2017, inspired by the United Nations. In 1992, the UN designated June 8th as World Oceans Day, a day to raise awareness of human impacts on our oceans and build a global movement for ocean protection. Each year, people across the world come together to share, learn, celebrate, and advocate for the health of our oceans. And we are honored to host the Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival as part of this global effort. Just a little bit about the festival before we get to our Nemo talk. Our program, it's a pretty massive program, actually. It's growing year after year. It includes in-person and online screenings of thought-provoking films, feature films, and short films, as well as resources for you to sort of explore and learn more about the topics of the films, interactive citizen science projects, educational activities, advocacy initiatives, and of course, our fabulous Nemo Talk series. Our goal is to inspire, engage, and connect people, and to encourage meaningful action to protect and restore the oceans we all depend on. So, a big part of that is learning from our amazing presenters like Dr. Cherisse Du Preez, who we're going to hear from today, about deep sea nurseries. Cherisse is the head of the Deep Sea Ecology Program at Fisheries and Oceans Canada and an adjunct professor at the University of Victoria. Her work explores the mysteries of the deep ocean, places where sunlight never reaches, yet life thrives in extraordinary ways. Dr. Du Preez's journey to marine science was unconventional. Born in South Africa and raised in Canada, she was a competitive surfer and diver. Initially, after struggling in academia due to undiagnosed dyslexia, a chance encounter with a former professor led her to seek support and reignite her academic pursuits. She went on to earn her PhD and now leads pioneering research in deep sea ecology. I find your trajectory so inspiring, Cherisse. In 2023, she led the Northeast Pacific Deep Sea Exploration Project, which made remarkable discoveries that have also been instrumental in establishing marine protected areas. Dr. Du Preez is a passionate science communicator, bringing the wonders of the deep sea to the public through storytelling and live broadcasts, and we are so grateful to have you with us today. Welcome, Cherisse.
Wow. What a wonderful way to start a Monday. I feel like everybody should start their work week with an introduction like that, and then we'd all just be so happy and productive. I'm gonna just take a second here to set up. Okay. And then so thumbs up if you can see my screen with my first slide. Great, fantastic. Okay, so wow, where to start now? I guess maybe I'll focus a little bit first on the Northeast Pacific Deep Sea Exploration Project, which we call NEEP Deep. And if you need to remember how to say it like a robot, NEEP Deep, because we use robots a lot in the deep sea. So this came about because of the United Nations Ocean Decade. And actually, maybe I should pause and say Happy Oceans Week, everybody. So the whole world together is more focused on the ocean as a whole. And so we wanted to come together, and I work for the federal government, but it just, there's so many ways to do science better than we used to. And so one of the ways we did was we decided to make this group, Meet Deep, and it's us. And when I say us, though, I'm going to mean it's the federal government, but it's also academics. It's the Pachidat, the Nuchalnut, the Quatsino, the Haida Nation. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Nation. It's everyone doing science together. That means being on the boat together. That means making art of the science together. That means publishing together. It means co-managing together. So when I talk about my research or the things we've discovered, it's all of us together. And I just wanted to acknowledge that right off the bat. Okay, so some Deep Sea 101. So we will start off on the same page. The deep sea is often called the midnight zone because it is perpetually dark. It starts where sunlight stops, and that's usually around 200 meters depth, but it goes down to a whopping 11 kilometers deep. It is 90% of the ocean, and the deep sea is the single largest ecosystem on our planet. And yet we talk about it like it is some other world, not our world. We make movies where people get into spacesuit looking equipment, and they go off and they see things like monsters. It's barren, it's dark, it's not our planet. But actually, the ocean defines our planet. On planets where there is no ocean, you find things like very sad Matt Damon's. Our planet is a blue planet. And it makes sense that in this blue planet, there are so many ecosystem services we get from the deep sea. And one that comes to mind first and foremost for people is that we get seafood from the deep sea. And I'm just going to pause for a second because I see something different on the screen. I'm hoping you can still see my slides. Is that right?
I can see your slides.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's okay. Then it doesn't matter what I see on the screen. Okay, thank you. Okay, so when I talk to people about, what does the deep sea do for you? A lot of people will say, well, we get seafood and maybe that's where it starts and it ends. But there's a million and one things that the deep sea does for us. And all you have to do is go back to that math, that 90% of the ocean, 95% of the livable space on our planet is the deep sea. So you can only imagine all the different ways that we're connected with the deep sea. And the one that I like to remind people is this climate regulation. So the deep sea is actually our greatest ally in combating climate change. You've probably heard David Attenborough say things like, every second breath you take is from the ocean. Other factoids that are lesser well known, but equally important, is the deep sea has absorbed 90% of the excess heat that we've created since the 1970s. So everything that's happening in our climate, it could be a lot worse if 90% of that wasn't already taken up. 30% of the excess CO2 we've created has been absorbed by the ocean. So this is just to get to the point that even if you don't feel like you're deeply connected with the deep sea, you are. And even if you live in the middle of Canada and not by the coastline at all, you are intrinsically connected to the deep sea. Now, if you live in British Columbia, you have some deep sea that is definitely worth boasting about. And I'm going to start talking to you about our deep sea, even deeper than the deep sea itself. We're going into plate tectonics, the Earth's crust. A little bit of geology throwback here is the Earth is made out of these crustal layers that collide and make life on our planet's surface really interesting. And so off the coast of British Columbia, we actually have 4 plates. We have the Pacific plate, we have the North American plate. That's usually where plate tectonics stop, is 2. But we also have Explorer plate, which is the world's smallest tectonic plate. And then just for good measure, we make it 4. We've also got the Juan de Fuca plate. That's a lot. And not only is it a lot, but they're moving really fast. This slip fault right here by Haida Gwaii is the fastest moving slip fault in the entire world. So our deep sea is jostling around. It's the reason why we have really cool mountains on our coastline. If you live on the island like I do, it's the reason why you can see Mount Baker. It's also the reason why we're all a little scared of the big one coming. But it does make for an incredible seascape, because you get things like, I'll introduce you to them now, but things like volcanoes under the water. So we start with this geology, and then we get this cool heat, and really neat chemistry. And those are the building blocks for life. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the seascapes that we have off the coast. Seamounts is just another way to say underwater volcanic mountain. So it's a mountain that's 1 kilometer high or higher. We actually get up to 3 kilometer high mountains off our coast. We have one of the densest seamount ranges in the entire world, but it's hidden by all that water. Now that happens where you get magma pockets. It's like a volcano on land, and it erupts just like on a volcano on land, but we don't see it. The other thing that that magma pocket does is when salt water trickles into the sea floor and interacts with it, that salt water gets super hot, dissolves a whole bunch of minerals around it, and comes screaming out of the sea floor. And we get hydrothermal vents. So think Banff hot springs, but like way hotter. So these can be 400 degrees Celsius. They're really amazing places. We have 35 of these vent fields just off our coast. And we also have cold seeps. So I'm going to pause there and say, I love being competitive. You introduced me as a competitive surfer. So we have so many of these things in BC. There's not one seamount and not one hydrothermal vent in Atlantic Canada or Arctic Canada. And it's actually remarkable that we have any in our waters whatsoever, because these things usually happen at mid-ocean ridges. But because of those jostling tectonic plates that we have off our coastline, we get them in our waters. So we get to study them, and eventually we get to protect them. The other thing we have is the cold seeps. So where those plates are sliding under each other, you get mass compression and you get gases being squeezed out of the seafloor. And so it's at these places where we find really amazing biology. And I'm going to start with the cold seeps and tell you what we found at the cold seeps. So using ship-based echolocation or sonar, we stream down into the water column and we can see bubbles. That's what you see here on the screen here. And in 2022, friends from Germany were off of our coast, and they saw this over 1 kilometer stream of bubbles. That's amazing. You don't find 1 kilometer streams of bubbles. That has to be so many bubbles. And so, like really good scientists, we got super excited about bubbles, and we're like, we're going to go find these bubbles. These are going to be our bubbles. So we assembled a great team of scientists, our Meet Deep scientists, and we got ourselves a submarine, and we got ourselves a very red, shiny ship. And we went out on this mission to go find the bubbles. Okay. So the other thing you get from ship-based acoustics is a really good map of the sea floor. And so this is the place where the bubbles were coming from. It's a mound just off Hesquiat Slope off Vancouver Island. It measured 60 meters in height and almost 1 kilometer in diameter. And we're like, okay, bubbles, we know what we're going to find of bubbles. It's remarkable stuff. We're going to find bubbles. We're going to find life that only exists with bubbles. So here's the bubbles here. Here's what we call chemosynthetic animals. So normal food webs on our planet, or that we learn about in grade school, derive energy from sunlight, consume things like plants or grass, and make small animals, and big animals eat the small animals, and so on and so forth. But only about 40 years ago did we discover that life in the deep sea, in the absence of sunlight, can consume chemicals coming out of the sea floor and make the building blocks of life. So that was incredible. A discovery in the deep sea just made 40 years ago. And so these tube worms that we see here don't have any organs like we're used to. They actually farm bacteria inside their bodies, and they create life in the absence of sunlight. So that's what we thought we were going to find. We also thought we would find a lot of fish down there, because wherever you can have food being created in the deep sea, you get a lot of life. And we also thought we would find corals and sponges. So really excited. We had very sophisticated science equipment, like this checkerboard here that you see. What we do is we hold the checkerboard in front of the bubbles. We record the bubbles, and you can see how big the bubbles are. Very, very challenging science here with our checkerboard. We also have a flask that you invert. And this, I'm trying to explain, science is like amazing, but it's amazing how we can actually do it in very simple ways to come up with these profound answers. Bubble volume and bubble size tells us about how much methane is escaping out of the seafloor. You can only imagine how important that is for things like greenhouse gases and such. So here's us inverting a flask and timing how long it takes to fill with bubbles. So these are the things we expected to do at our Hesquiot Slope mound that we went to. What we weren't expecting, though, is what I'm going to tell you about next. The fine sediment that made up the mound, so like the sand and the mud, kept the seafloor in a way that the bubbles were actually getting trapped underneath the surface that we could see. And when the bubbles get trapped at certain depths with certain temperatures, it changes from being bubbles into being a solid. It actually changes into ice. And the ice was buoying up and blistering out of the seafloor, and that's what was creating this mound. And so it would get to the top, and then gravity would take over and everything would roll down the side. And so we started to find weird things around the base of this mound. Now, we were really excited about our bubbles and our tube worms. What I'm going to show you next was crazy. So we started to see underwater icebergs sliding by us down the mound. So this is almost a 10-meter across iceberg. This is on the sea floor, and it just slides by us. And we're like, what is going on? And it was all accumulating at the bottom. So the other thing that I didn't tell you is when that chemical reaction occurs to make the building blocks of life out of methane bubbling out of the seafloor, it makes a byproduct called carbonate rock. So you can see this white rock here. That's actually carbonate stored in the ocean as a solid. And this rock is a really great place for things like corals and sponges to live. That's why we thought we were going to find that there. And so we started to find these round carbonate boulders that had rolled down the mound and accumulated around the side of it. And it was just making a really concentrated area. And some of these carbonate rocks were really large, like the size of buildings. And you can see that they're all like kind of crevicey and cavey. And so we're doing what you're kind of doing now, which is looking at the screen really intently, because we started noticing that there were purple blobs all over our beautiful white rocks. And what we realized pretty quickly is that we had discovered a deep sea octopus nursery ground. And those purple blobs were this beautiful Grandilodon pacifica octopus, and they were all moms, and they were all sitting on top of eggs, which was pretty dang cool, because we thought we were looking for tube worms. And if you look really closely, the egg underneath the octopus's arms here, you can actually see the little black dots of the little octopus eyes. So you know that these octopus are pretty close to coming out. Okay, so this had been discovered 2-3 times in the world when we found this. So we knew what we had found was pretty rare, but we sat there and we watched, and then what we saw next was something that's never been filmed before. The moms were protecting their eggs. So there were scarlet king crabs that were coming around the octopus, and knowing that the mom was ending the end of her life, getting close to the end of her life because her octopus babies were ready to hatch, they were starting to get around for the feast because, I'm sorry, this is going to come as news to some of you, but the last thing an octopus does, like a salmon, is reproduce and then it dies. So the moms were sitting on their eggs. They won't let go until they feel the little eggs hatch and the little octopus swim away, but then they'll fall off the rock and they'll become part of the food chain. But these crabs, they wanted the mom then and there. So they were pulling at her and the mom was fighting them off. We saw little babies around, so we knew that these moms must win, but we actually sat on the sea floor watching for a really long time because we couldn't tear ourselves away from watching this one mom in particular. And what we started to film was that she was using her wonderful 8 arms to punch. So these crabs were much larger than her. She was punching them. And this had never been filmed before. But of course, after I saw this, came back to land, started looking it up, and there's actually, you could go down a really funny rabbit hole of looking at all the things an octopus will punch. I highly recommend you spend some time on your Monday Googling octopus punching things, because apparently they punch fish and they throw rocks. And if you're squishy and maybe you'd make a good meal, what else are you going to do to defend yourself other than use your 8 wonderful arms? And so this mom was doing that, and we sat around and recorded this, because although we had our checkerboard and we were supposed to be measuring bubbles, we acknowledged that when you see behaviors like this that can connect people to the deep sea, it is worth sitting down and watching it. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a video. But before I do, I'm going to tell you probably the final most remarkable thing about this mom octopus. And if any of you have watched The Octopus Teacher, you'll know that the moms don't move once they lay the eggs. They sit there and they care for and they defend. And when you see the moms moving their arms like this, that's them bringing fresh water over the eggs and making sure that they're clean and that they're getting oxygen. But a deep sea mom octopus will do this for 4.5 years. Because everything in the deep sea is longer and it's bigger and it's just more than you could ever imagine. So for 4.5 years, this mom has done this. And now this is a video of her coming to the end of her life, but still defending her young. So let's see if I can get this to play. So after we spent an hour with this mom, we went and we did our very good science deeds, and then we couldn't help it. We had to come back before the end of the dive, and we did see that the mom had defended off all the crabs and her young were fine and she was still there. So it was just to close up the story, she won that battle. Okay. So if I discovered, one nursery ground in my entire career, I promise you I would be happy. But we've actually discovered 2 off the coast of British Columbia. And I'm going to tell you about the second one now. And for that, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to talk about seamounts and hydrothermal vents. So those are those volcanoes where there's hot water, there's hot magma, and I'm going to tell you about the life that we found there. So this is off the coast of Haida Gwaii. Let's go back 6 years ago. We didn't know there was a volcano there. We definitely didn't know it was active, and we didn't know any of the life was there. So this is all really cutting research that we were able to perform. And we've actually just published this, I think about a week or 2 ago, in a fantastic write-up with the Haida Nation. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the geology because it's pretty remarkable. Since maybe you don't know that much about the geology of the seafloor, you'll be like, oh, every seamount is like this. But I promise you, This is groundbreaking discovery. But what we actually found was at two seamounts, two of these volcanoes off Haida Gwaii, water is being sucked into one of the seamounts. It's going through like conduits, pipes under the ground. It's taking advantage of the old lava tubes. It is getting heated along the way, and it is coming out of another seamount. And so we have this convection, or this connection of two seamounts. So if you think about like how trees talk to each other, well, in our waters, we've clocked that seamounts 50 kilometers apart from each other can have direct tubes of water where they exchange water materials and heat. This is the fourth time in the world that it's ever been documented. And of course, the amazing geology that we've discovered begets to amazing biology. And so I'll just show you a little bit about some of the measurements we took. This is us going between the two seamounts using a temperature probe from Woods Hole. And what we were measuring there is a change in the temperature between the two seamounts, showing us that one was hot and one was cold. That's an oversimplification, but this is us doing those measurements. And then this is us at the crevice of one of the seamounts, and with a direct temperature probe measuring that indeed there's hotter water coming out than would be expected if it was just ambient water. And so we were able to definitively prove that that is a hot seamount. It is putting out hot water, and our theory is that it's this connection between two seamounts. And so, like I alluded to, this really interesting geology, I could give a talk on each one of these subjects, but we're a kilometer and a half down into the deep sea right now. And when we showed up on the summit of the seamount, it was just coral, like it was a tropical coral reef. These are multi-meter high corals that you're seeing here. Again, a kilometer and a half down, we wouldn't expect to see this density of life. So that was remarkable. If that wasn't good enough, we also found a precious coral bed on the volcano. And I'm going to pause there and say, precious coral is something you find in Hawaii. It was something that was bottom trawled to make jewelry out of. It's a very vulnerable and endangered animal. It's never been discovered in Canada. Here it is on the side of this active volcano off our coast. Okay. If you weren't just looking at the seafloor, though, you would start to notice that there were these giant white things swimming around you. This is the Pacific white skate. In the deep sea, everything kind of suffers from this wonderful thing called deep sea giantism. Everything grows much larger than life. These are multi-meter skates, rays, manta rays. It's a cousin of the shark. They are flying up this active volcano like it was a highway, and they're moving up to the vents at the top of it. They're actually seeking out the vents. And in this picture here, you have the beautiful coral, you have this giant skate, and then underneath it, this black with the yellow around it, that's actually one of the vents that's putting out the hot water. So they seek out the vents, and then they start to do a birthing behavior. And they are laying giant golden eggs that can be 45 centimeters across. And they're swooping down, they're using the coral to scrape it, and they're laying it on the venting seamount. Now, we've counted, we've extrapolated, and we've now published on it. So in the densest part of the nursery ground alone, we estimate that there's about 2.1 million of these eggs. 2.1 million. The most eggs that have ever been discovered in one place before this is about 130 eggs, and that was only discovered in one other place. So again, kind of competitive. We got them beat by a little smidge. We're at 2.1 million eggs. Okay, these eggs start off golden in color. So here's our submersible in the background here. Here you can see some of these golden eggs. Once they spend a little time, they turn into this brown color. And so this is, again, 45 centimeters. This is a really nice angle to see them at, nestled in the rocks where the hot water's coming out. We've got the coral in the background. But to count them, we use a downward facing camera. So I just showed you what the eggs look like. So now my challenge to you would be, look at the picture and how many eggs do you see? It's a little bit of an egg hunt. And I'm gonna give you some clues. So I told you they start off golden. So maybe if that's all you heard me say, you would think maybe there's 4 eggs here. Maybe you start to look and you can see some more in the crevices, and it's about 100 in this picture. So that's how you get 2.1 million on the summit of a Ventine volcano. There's a lot there. That nursery then fuels its own oasis of life. And so we have things like, I would love to go down this rabbit hole, but if anyone's heard of the blobfish, unfortunately deemed the ugliest fish in the ocean, but only when you fish it and you bring it up to the deck of a ship. This is how cute they look when they're sitting on the floor. Here's another piece of homework. Google a blobfish. They've got a totally bad rep. They are adorable, and if you don't believe me, in addition to them looking cute and having cheeks for days, they also lay pink eggs, which is super cute. So inside of the skate nursery, we now have a blobfish nursery. We also have crabs that are mating, and they do very well there because of all this food source. And then we actually found another octopus nursery inside, because octopus do really well when there's a whole bunch of half-meter eggs sitting around, just, prime to be picked up and eaten. So I'm going to show you a video now of what it looks like with these skates going up the side of this active volcano to lay their eggs. Ooh. Okay. We didn't just film the eggs. We did collect some of the eggs. I'm going to sneak peek some preliminary results for you because I'm competitive. I gotta stop saying that. But I told you that the octopus mom, it was actually down in California. They clocked the octopus mom sitting on her eggs for 4.5 years. So that's actually the record for the world. That's the longest period it takes to develop. So here's us with a submarine picking up some of these eggs. And I won't go into the details, but we looked at the developmental stage, the color of the eggs. We've actually gone back to the seamount 3 times now. And what we did was we clocked how long it takes for the eggs to develop. And our estimate right now is 9.6 years. So you lay an egg, you leave it in the warm water. The warm water actually helps incubate it. That's why we think they're going to these volcanoes. But even with that help, that warm water, they're still taking almost 10 years. So we're working on the research now, but this would double what we thought life was capable of on our planet for how long it takes to grow a young animal. Okay, so I've spoken about these deep sea nursery grounds, and I've tried to make these connections, connecting planet Earth as a deep sea planet. I'm connecting geology to biology. I've told you about these discoveries. Recently, just about a month ago, a paper came out that showed that we've actually only seen 0.0004% of the seafloor on our planet. So that leaves 99 point, all those nines remaining. So these discoveries really lead us to questions about what's life capable of on our planet, what else is out there. It connects young animals to all the biodiversity that we see down there. And I think what these nursery grounds really do is connect us people to the animals down there, because we see animals that are just struggling to have young, to care for them, to see them grow into strong animals and go off into the abyss. And I think we can all relate to that. And so that's why I really like sharing these nursery grounds. But I do want to say that it's not just discovery for the sake of discovery. I mentioned who we are, that we're the co-managing nations of these areas of British Columbia. And so I just wanted to point out that as part of the United Nations in the Ocean Decade, and this goal of everybody is to protect at least 30% of the ocean by 2030, we've seen in the last 5 years that we've upped the amount of deep sea marine protected areas off our coast from somewhere around 16,000 to 166,000 kilometers squared. So this is what we've created in about the last 5 years. I just want to point out that right now, under consideration with the co-managing First Nations, is us creating a marine protected area around the Tuzo Wilsons, which is the name of those seamounts where the skates are. And then another one is the cold seeps, where the octopus are thriving in their nurseries. And so again, just together, collecting this information, and working, because we're the governments, we can turn that science directly into science advice to make marine protected areas. And so I don't mean to leave it on a sad note, but I do want to just say that the deep sea it's not remote, it's not far away, it's not just over there. And so when we talk about protection, we're talking about protection from things like bottom contact fishing, and also the gear that gets lost. And so here's us on our last expedition looking at a massive troll net that was lost and will stay down there just in perpetuity, just basically forever, because it's the deep sea. So it really, it's like putting something in the refrigerator, it lasts forever. And this net was rolling around the seafloor, ghost fishing and making it so that nothing could live around it. And so unfortunately, both nurseries I just told you about are both in areas that could still be bottom contact fished. And what I have here is some lines. It's an unfortunate trick. If you want to find cold seeps and you don't have really nice bubble maps, what you can do is look at bottom trolling lines. So that's the lines you see here, and where they all cross over in the middle will always seem to be a cold seep. And that's because that's where the fish are. So it's not that the fishers are trying to harm cold seeps, but it's because all of that life begets life. And that's where you target fishing. So these places are vulnerable to direct human activities, but then also indirectly. And so this is a paper we published a few years ago, but essentially climate change is already impacting the deep sea. Off our coast, we've lost 15% of the oxygen in our waters in the last 60 years. And what I have here is just the depths symbolized, this expanding body of low oxygen. And unfortunately, I'm just going to show you that where it's expanding to, that depth is where we find both nursery grounds. And so animals are being impacted by things that are outside of our control now too. But I don't want to have that be like a sad message. That just means that controlling what is in our powers is even more important. And so I'm just going to briefly tell you about emerging industries that are coming to our waters and to our coastline that I would ask people to think critically about, because they are good intentioned ideas for a green future, but they rely on us going into the deep sea and impacting it. And so one is where people are suggesting we put excess carbon. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but it's injecting carbon into the geology it's directing it into the seafloor and plugging it with solid carbon. But then none of that fluid movement can happen. None of the gas escaping, none of the hydrothermal venting, all those channels that are down there to facilitate movement would get blocked by our carbon. In addition to that, and the one that I work on a lot as a delegate to the International Seabed Authority, is this idea that for an electric future, we need to get metals from the deep sea. And very unfortunately, the deep sea that they're targeting is hydrothermal vents, seamounts, among other places. So we actually have a company that I don't feel like I'm outing them, because they know they're a company. They know they're here in Vancouver, in downtown Vancouver. It's called the Metal Company. Their slogan is, a shift to electric with the lightest planetary touch. And so their idea is to mine the deep sea for these minerals. this is just a map of all the places, but I just wanted to point out that they call the minerals things like polymetallic nodules, polymetallic sulfides. Those are just words for seamounts and hydrothermal vents. This is the equipment that is planned to be used. This is a human being for scale. If this is ringing bells of Fern Gully or Avatar, then you are on the right pathway. It's a little bit crazy. The idea is you send the machines down, they will churn up the hydrothermal vents, the seamounts, the nodules, bring it back up to the ship, refine it, the wastewater goes overboard, the metals go to land. I'm trying to do this unbiasedly as possible, but all scientists agree that we're talking about 100% mortality at the mine sites, and then the plumes that are created would be large mass mortality too, for hundreds of kilometers. Okay, again, could be depressing, except for there are still things we can do in our control right now. And so when you hear people talk about, and the US's decision to accelerate deep sea mining, the United Nations is deciding on this now. This is all stuff that they're engaging with the public for. So I'm going to go to the actions that we kind of like left at the end of the web write-up. Is everything we do on land impacts the deep sea, and vice versa. Stay informed. If hearing from me is the first time you've heard about carbon being put in the deep sea or deep sea mining, these are things that are actually being decided, like not like in decades time, but right now, like in the next couple months, we'll decide how we move forward with these things. Do speak up. There's public consultation on all of this, including when we propose marine protected areas. So when there's a proposal for the nursery grounds, that will actually go to public consultation. So you can have a say on how valuable these places are to you. And then the other thing is there's lots of stuff streaming online. I kind of haven't alluded to it yet, but everything we do, we stream online in real time. And we're actually going back to the cold seeps in July, and we're going back to the skate nursery in September. And so you can join those expeditions by following Knee Deep. We stream all of our dives online live. You can hear everything we're doing. You can see everything, for better or worse, it's like Big Brother. And we also do lots of webinars and lots of social media. And even if you try to avoid us, you'll probably see us, because we actually provide content to a lot of different places. So I'm going to end off this talk by just, David Attenborough put out a new documentary for his 99th birthday, and it's called Oceans. I know that everybody here is really big into films and docs. So, if we save the sea, we save our world. After a lifetime of filming our planet, I'm sure nothing is more important. And with that, Howard, Klecker, and merci. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about the thing that I love the most in the world, which is the deep sea.
Wow. I think everybody's just, wow, that you just blew me away, Cherisse. Like there's so much information and hope and opportunity to actually take action that can help in your work and in your presentation. So it's a little bit mind-blowing. We've got some questions popping into the chat. I think what we'll do is I'll start to pull some of the questions from the chat and pose them to Cherisse. And then if anybody wants to, put up your hand if you've got a question or you want to talk a little bit and engage in a conversation, just please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your Zoom window, and you'll queue up and I'll just call on you. And I just have to say, like, wow, the amount of life down there, and like punching octopus mums, and like awesome. No wonder you're having so much fun with this and so excited about it, because it's just epic. Okay,
Yeah.
got from Sarama, who's a local filmmaker and a diver, and he's seen some pretty amazing things. He says, I've recently read that these metallic nodules actually produce oxygen through an electric process. So removing these nodules could reduce this essential oxygen production. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. Yeah, Andrew Sweetman, a colleague, went out with the mining companies, because sometimes scientists collaborate with the companies so that we get access to it. And he did really important measurements on the seafloor in the places where they're planning to mine. One of the target places is a nodule field off of the west coast of America. It's actually half the size of the United States. It's this massive area, and it's the one that people think they're going to start mining like literally next month. And he made this groundbreaking discovery that once again would challenge how we think life on this planet can function, and also where it started. This is another really neat step towards understanding that life on our planet might have started in the deep sea at hydrothermal vents, which is really cool. But yes, yet another reason why taking the metals out of the sea would be bad, other than being home for all these animals. Yeah, it's really good that that made it out to you. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, we showed what was it called, Billy? The movie that we showed last year about exactly
Deep
that,
rising.
Deep Rising, about the volcano.
Ah,
Oh yeah, it was shocking to learn. And those machines are massive.
yes.
Like, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? I don't see other questions just yet, but can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about like the potential harm?
Yeah. So uh, they phrase it as like they're just going to go pick up these metals. And whenever they show a picture of what it looks like, there's no life down there, and it's just them collecting, what is just left on the seafloor, these metals. Um, the machines are fit for purpose, so they either suck up a huge layer of the seafloor, or they crunch up the side of a seamount and they slurp it up. But what they never show you is all those animals get crunched up and slurped up too, and all get vacuumed up to the ship. So I say like Avatar, I say Fern Gully. It's like it's just an absolute destruction of this pristine environment by these massive, indiscriminate machines that will just mow these areas that they're not small areas. I said half the size of the United States. There's another one that's considered small, that's like a third the size of Australia. And then while that might sound like there could be nothing worse, that plume that gets overlooked, all that waste, because only the very refined metal gets shipped back to shore. Everything else, all the animals and the sediment, and just gets dumped over the side of the ship. And the thought is that that waste cloud is going to be 100 kilometers in diameter, toxic, radioactive, snuff out the light, the noise pollution, the list of cascading effects. And so to give you an example, tuna fishers are really worried. Any fish that goes into the oceanic system, like there are mining sites in the North Pacific along the trails of where salmon will go. And so if anybody is familiar with bioaccumulation, if this radioactive toxic waste is getting into the food chain and being consumed by animals like tuna and stuff like that, you get that biomagnification. So not only might you lose the animals themselves, but if humans start to consume that, if you think about mercury poisoning, so it's just like, it's not deep sea mining, it's ocean mining, and the impact will be everywhere, not just a sad rock on the seafloor getting demolished. And we're talking about changing the global ocean on a scale that has never been seen before.
Leave it to humans. Geez. The
Sorry, I gotta just say, because you're getting it, when they say this is for a green future, I'm like, don't. Like,
no.
just own it. Just say it's for the money, or say it's for like a quick, because nobody believes that this is going to stop anything that happens on land. And it kills me when they're like, we need this for a green future. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, this
Maybe
is
like
This is one of the hardest parts of the conservation work and the movement is really like breaking through the greenwashing on
Oh
so many
yeah.
different levels. Yeah, it's just before we move on to the next question, the 30 by 30 and the protected area MPA, you said that there's an opportunity to voice our support
Hmm.
for that or to have this because I want to say before that the when I saw this, deep ocean MPA, I was cynical about it. I was like, oh,
Okay.
the federal government just wants to put MPAs far away
Yeah.
from where the values might be because I was ignorant. And then the more I
Hmm.
got informed, I was like, holy cow, this is really important. So then what you just showed us, I think, is so important for people to understand. This isn't just
Yeah.
some faraway thing. It's got massive value. How do we support it?
Yeah, thank you for owning that
Yeah.
because I heard that a lot. And I want to say, so you're talking about Tangwan Hachbika CD's MPA, and it is the largest Governor General MPA in all of Canada. And people did think we were just going for an easy grab
Yeah.
out at sea. And it is co-managed with all the First Nations. But I will say that, remember when I said we don't usually get hydrothermal vents and seamounts in our waters? They're usually at mid-ocean ridges. What we've protected in this MPA is not just important for Canada and First Nations, but we have protected like a significant proportion of the global amount of seamounts and hydrothermal vents that are protected anywhere, because it's not usually in a country's jurisdiction to be able to step up like this. So I think the number is about 33% of all hydrothermal vents in the world that are protected in our waters by us. Like that is an amazing contribution where the rest of the world is looking at their hydrothermal vents like, ooh, those look really valuable. We should mine them. We're like, nope, it's already a moratorium in our water against deep sea mining. You can't touch them. That was an incredible opportunity for Canada. Um, the MPA process takes some time, and because it's permanent, there's other closures that will come up faster, like fishing closures and stuff, but for something permanent it takes a while. And so what you'll probably see is maybe in a year or two's time, Fisheries and Oceans Canada will put out a call for public feedback, because they will propose making these MPAs, and they will ask the public to weigh up the trade-offs and to write in. And so that's something that is done online. And other than following, I don't know how you would maybe get a notification, but there are trade-offs. Like, we are going to lose some fishing ground, but the trade-off is this protection. And so they do look for feedback, and anybody can write in about it, and it is taken very seriously. So I would highly recommend, if you're someone who keeps an eye on Fisheries and Oceans Canada, looking for that time to consult.
Awesome. Yeah, we
Yeah,
do at the SCCA as an organization, we follow a lot of these engagement processes over conservation and land use management and water management. And we've got a little team that participates in the Ocean Protection Plan. And so we will definitely be hitting you up, Cherisse, for some
good,
support with submissions, right? And
good.
communications to engage the public on that. And actually, I've got a question from one of the folks who works with us on those types of things. Diane Sanford is asking, is there any information on the biodiversity of the deep sea mounts in terms of numbers of species and abundance?
Ooh.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the short answer is we don't know, because like the numbers vary, but sometimes people believe that we only know 5% of the animals that are out there right now. To give you an idea, there are more corals in the deep sea than there are in the tropics. So it's not like a small little addition that the deep sea is bringing. It's on par with the most diverse ecosystems we know for the marine environment. The coral one is the one that stands out for me. But essentially, every time we go down there, we see an animal that's new to science. And one day, but there's huge global initiatives to do consensus, and inventory these places. But your seamounts and your hydrothermal vents are definitely your hotspots. And because they're so large, they're so steep, they transition through so many different layers of water, up to 3 kilometers of it. You get all these animals, from deep sea Nemo looking fish to fur seals at the top, all within like a kilometer horizontal distance. So the biodiversity at these places is astounding, because where do all those things live together other than at a seamount? You need that sharp vertical rise. And so I could give a whole other talk about biodiversity, but it's something else. So
Yes,
sorry, you
agreed.
even see seabirds flock, and whales. You just it's everything is there.
Wow, it feels like
Yeah,
there's so much, like, I was trying to keep track a little bit of some of the data that you were throwing at us, and it's just like this
so much.
tiny proportion of what we know, and this massive, just massive amount of biodiversity in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Billy says, I've been following an international campaign called Defend the Deep. Are you familiar with
Hmm.
it?
I believe so. Yeah. Actually, yes. Yeah. It's really great because they make little emojis and memes that go on social media, and I appreciate that. I appreciate anytime you get science out of the hands of scientists and you make it so. When they started, I think Defend the Deep started making social media little stickers and stuff like that. I was like, good on you, because then people can use it and post about it. Yeah, it's a good one, and I do appreciate that it's not just for a science audience. They made it accessible to everybody so that everybody can understand the decision that we're about to make. I, I know it wasn't the question, but it's a neat factoid, and I'm full of factoids. The first act of humanity as a whole was the moratorium on whaling, and that's how we kickstarted the United Nations. And now the call, which is partially coming from Defend the Deep, for the moratorium on deep sea mining would be the second act of humanity as a whole. So it's kind of exciting. Are we going to do it again? Um, I hope so.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's help with that. That's a really beautiful, it's a kind of a really beautiful place to wrap up, I think, this talk, Cherisse. Like, the sometimes, the terrible impacts that we have collectively without realizing it can feel quite overwhelming. But then, where there's an opportunity to do something at that scale to really, make the change and protect that connection to all things on the planet. And this is the beauty of the ocean festival, as we try to present it, is really to make that connection, to like break the surface so that people can see what we don't normally see, because most of us are not well, most of us are never going to go that far underwater, and a lot of people don't really go there for the most part at all. So it's, thank you for bringing us
Well said. Yeah.
deep
Thank
into the
you.
ocean, and bridging that connection for us. It's amazing. I learned so much from your talk, and it's just very inspiring. So with that, I want to say that what we usually do with these talks is that we, a lot of information comes up, and we take that and we put that onto the dedicated page on our website where Cherisse's talk is, and we will upload this video and we will put it up there, and we'll give some take action items and different places where people can plug in and learn more and Google blobfish and all the cool things, and just really encourage people to go and check that out. And let's see here, just sort of wind up. If you have any questions, or if you want to, get information about the next parts of our festival and our next Nemo talks, please send us an email or join up to our mailing list. You can get all of that from the Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival website. Um, Huge thanks to everybody who came out to the talk and shared your questions and your passion. Tomorrow, we're going to be hearing from Adam Taylor and the Marine Life Sanctuary Society about glass sponge reefs and rockfish conservation. So yet more deep under the water, super cool and fascinating ecosystems. And yeah, and just the festival, we've got some upcoming events as well. Another film screening on Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the Sunshine Coast Arts Center in Seashelt. That one's called Chasing Coral. And then I've actually got, I'm not going to give you the whole list, everybody. I'm going to just direct you to the website. There are so many activities. We've got partners doing citizen science and paddling and beach cleanups and all kinds of stuff. Really, the community is coming together so much now around Oceans Week. It's super inspiring. And of course, we end the festival on June 8th, World Oceans Day, with our celebration at Mission Point Park. So I hope to see you all at all of the things. And thank you so much for coming today.